Hi, everyone, and welcome along. The Fitness Business Podcast is supporting you throughout COVID-19 with a series of special interviews with key industry owners, operators, and managers from right across the globe. Today's interview is brought to you by our foundation partner, Active Management, and my special guest for today is Rich Hutson. Rich is the Business Development Manager for GoFit, and GoFit is part of the Evolution Wellness Group based out of Malaysia. Rich, welcome. It is so great to see you again.
Thanks, Chantal. Thanks for having me back. I'm surprised you had me back.
We are thrilled that you said yes to joining us once again. And for anyone that missed Rich's first appearance on the show, he was a guest on episode 267. So not too long ago, kind of. We're in the 286 now as we go to air with this particular episode. But for anyone that missed it, just head to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and search for 267. Now, a few things have changed since we last caught up. So, Rich, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and about the business and the role that you're currently working in?
Well, I know we don't have much time, so I'll keep it pretty quick with the introduction. But actually, I was quite blessed to really start my fitness industry in Australia. And I came from Canada and moved there with not a penny in my pocket. My story is quite unique. I ended up sleeping on the floor of a gym for the first 2-3 months to save enough money and to work my way up, and was lucky enough to be involved with some big companies such as Fitness First and Healthlands back in the day. I was given the opportunity to lead our expansion into Southeast Asia in 2001, where I took up the role as the sales director for Asia, spent 3 years there. Then went over to Europe and was our sales director for Europe for 5 years, where I was lucky enough to meet my lovely wife as well. And better say that. And then I came back to Asia, where I was in Asia for another 7 years as the Asia sales director for Fitness First. From there, I took off and branched out with a partner and a good friend of mine named Dave Nuku, and we started Malaysia's very first boutique club called Fire Fitness, and which was highly successful. From there, though, we realized that, both of us pulling a wage, having kids in private school here, as you have to in Malaysia, that we needed to, I thought I would go out and get another role. And within, I took the CEO job for Chief Fitness here in Malaysia. We had some phenomenal success, turned the business around in a very short time and ended up selling it back to EW, otherwise known as Fitness First. We also just recently sold Fire Fitness to EW. So they missed me so much. They bought both companies, and now I'm back working for them again in the role as business development manager. And I'm super excited. My new role, we are now launching our first high-value, low-cost option, which is called GoFit, as I think I've mentioned before. And this is our foray into Asia. We'll be licensing this across Asia and the rest of the world. We're incredibly excited about this high-tech platform that we've got. And it's incredibly different, and we think it's going to be highly successful, especially in today's marketplace with all the things that are going on.
Fantastic, Rich, and congratulations on that. I'm really excited to see how that goes for you. And, I think this particular topic that we're talking about today just seems so highly relevant in the current environment. And you and I had a quick chat before we went on air today, and I was saying to you, I feel as though, yes, there are some businesses out there that are doing a phenomenal job from the leadership stance and from keeping in contact with their staff members. But unfortunately, there's also the flip side. And I've seen some businesses that have kind of, I think, been so scared by the entire situation that they've just stopped communicating, which obviously we don't want to do. So today you've agreed to join us here on the show and share with us 5 ways or 5 tips, I should say, on how to lead through challenging times. So do you want to take us through those?
I think, overall leadership is such a broad subject, and there's so many key points. And when I wrote this article, it was originally about just focusing on when you're in troubled times, but really these are things that you should be doing all the time if they're, key points of being a great leader. And ultimately we know it's a fact, but sometimes we don't realize it, that within ourselves, we are, as leading the teams, as in a leader, looking at our own selves, how important we are in that role. And, that's going to determine the success or the failure of any team, sports team, anything that, takes leadership. So it is a tough thing to do. It's not an easy role. but I think most of us enjoy being in that position, and that's why we're here. So one of the leadership mantras that I have is something, number one, is called everything counts. And for me, it's, I mentioned it on your last show before, you may remember. And for me, this is incredibly important, because one thing you have to accept is that you're always on show as a leader, and you're always going to be judged, whether you like it or you don't like it. It's just the way it is. So everything that you do, your team below you and the people around you are all going to be either be placing a good tick in the box or a bad tick for all the things that you do. So we're constantly on show, and we have to be aware of that. And right now is one of those times where your team is going to need you most, and going to be really judging everything that you say, you do, you don't say, when it comes to, the actions that you're going to be taking, especially in tough times. And this goes for anybody, whether you're in sales or whatever it is. Everything counts, everything counts, everything counts. And within our subconscious, we come with conscious opinions and thoughts that are all formed through our feelings, our experiences, and so forth. So bear that in mind, that through these tough times, you're always on show. So be very careful with the communications you make, everything there is. Number one leads into that word, which is communication. And, it's talked about all the time. Any great leader will talk about the key importance of communication, but there's always a gap between what needs to be done and what is done. And I feel this is probably one of the biggest gaps you'll see, especially in this time, on speaking to many people out there, is people are frozen. And, I would say that communication is probably the most overused noun, I've said, in a CEO's toolbox, because they think they're doing it, but they're not. And there's, if we look at communication as a whole, it's emails, it's texting, it's videos like these, it's phone calls, it's all those different things, it's Zoom, it's Skype, it's all those things. But there's different forms. And remember, communication is not just about you talking. Communication is not an email, because communication is also about listening and getting feedback from your people, and checking on them right now and really making sure they're okay, and going past your level of leadership that's below you, going 1, 2, 3 deep. Because, I can't tell you how important that is when your boss hears from you. I know I like to hear from mine, and everybody likes to hear from their bosses to know that they're okay. And you just need to ask them how they're feeling, how they're coping. What are they doing in their time? What have they learned? Think of some questions. Get to know them as a person, because people don't work for businesses, they work for people. And we have to always remember that you're going to get the best you can from your team right now if they feel like they're loved and cared for. Because I tell you what happens when there's silence, Chantal? People start to wonder and think, what's going on? What's happening with my job? Where am I in this whole thing? Nobody's spoken to me. And it's actually the absolute worst thing you can do. So we have to continue to and over communicate. There's no such thing as over communicating when you get to a position like this.
Rich, I couldn't agree more. And I just want to share an example with you that I have had personally, and it's demonstrates exactly what you're talking about. I teach group fitness for a number of different organizations. And as I said to you, a couple of them I've heard nothing. But in one particular business, which is quite a large business in Australia, rather than me just hearing from, say, the group fitness manager to their instructors, what has happened is the CEO of that organization is actually sending, like, whether or not he's sitting there typing them himself, I don't care, but sending direct personal messages to the team with updates on what's happening on a really regular basis. So sending an SMS and saying, hey, just letting you know where we're at with A, B, and C. And, ordinarily we don't necessarily hear from that person because we've got all of these other levels of management between a group fitness instructor and the CEO. But during the COVID-19 crisis, he has decided that he will communicate with all the team throughout this and will personally sign off on each of the SMS. And I've got to tell you, it's been one of the best things that I've had, experiences I've had from a employee position.
Well, there you go. That just proves that point, doesn't it? And somebody as important as you and as well known, right? Who's getting a lot of contact out there and speaking with people, it makes such an impact, so that's great to hear. That's a great example. That backs
great experience. Great. So I'm writing down notes as you're talking because I love your reference where you started talking about everything counts, because to me, it made me think, well, everything counts as far as what you do say, but it also counts in what you don't say or if you don't communicate. So I love that as your starting point. So we've done number one, we've talked about sort of communication, going past your direct reports. What's up next?
Next one, we've got create hope. So everybody's scared. And if you're not scared, then you're not looking at the reality of the situation. Scared isn't the right word, but, we feel that way. We're nervous, we're tense, we're not sure what's going to happen. But I think, from a leadership position, as you know, I always refer good to great. And one of the parts of that book is confront the brutal facts. So I don't think that you should sugarcoat everything and tell a bunch of lies in your leadership position, but I certainly don't think you should start off by saying everybody's job is in jeopardy. You don't know what's going to happen. My job's in jeopardy. I'm worried about myself. I think you need to make sure that, everybody within your business knows that it's tough times, that there could be tough moves ahead. But what you have to do is make sure you're showing them that you've got a plan and that you have a plan and that you're going to do everything within your power to make sure that you get through that, and that you make sure that everybody is going to be okay with, the best of your knowledge and the best of your ability to make changes to within your business. And I had a good debate with somebody about this. They said, well, Rich, I don't know if I want to tell them that because I'm not sure I can do it. And I said, look, I'll give you two choices. You can pose it your way and have somebody really feeling nervous and sick and down during this time. And I assume, most of us are paying our staff. We are paying ours. Or you can have somebody working to 150% of their ability because you're giving them belief that there is something down the road and that we will get better. And I know which different path I'd like to take with that. So, I think that's important to make sure that your vision has hope and your message has hope. And you should never be talking about your own self, worrying about your own position. I think, I've heard a couple leaders say, well, I'm worried about my own job. And I said, yeah, I get that. We all are, but you can't push that down the line to your people. If you ever watch the movie Saving Private Ryan, it's just some great examples of that on how he leads with the good old Tom Hanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rich. I love that. So that's number two. Do you want to move us into number three?
Certainly can. So, one thing I learned from a guy by the name of Mike Belfour, who was the gentleman who started Fitness First way back in the day, is I'll never forget, I was trying to work out a problem, and he took my notepad in the meeting and he wrote, spend 90% of your time focusing on what the real problem is. And I will never, ever, ever forget that, because it's stuck in my head that, we sometimes think we know what the problems are. We make assumptions and we start to provide the answers, but we're first of all, we're not asking the right questions. We're not digging deep enough to really make sure that we know what these challenges are going to be in time. And, when you guess, that's when you get in big trouble, especially in our business, when you're guessing as to what it could be. So I really highly recommend to people to make sure that they're focusing on asking the right questions, digging deep to find out what they believe those answers to be. And the funny part about it is the answers are never really new, the answers are really easy when you figure out what the issues are and you've dug deep enough.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it prompted me I was just doing a really quick Google when you said that, because that whole idea of spending the time on working out what the true problems are, I think is so important. And I actually did an interview with Emmett Williams, the president of MyZone, about 12 months ago, I think it was. And he said to me, I want to come and we're going to have a talk about, finding growth in your fitness business. But what we really spent all the time on was some strategies on how to identify what the key problems were in order to then go on to the growth strategies. So I might just mention, if anyone missed that, it was episode 240, and I'll put it in the comments of this today, because it's the perfect example of what you're talking about in relation to, you said spend 90% of the time working out what the real problem is. And that's exactly the same thing that we talked about in that episode. So thank you for bringing that up, Rich. That's great. So, okay. So now we're on to number 4, correct?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's number 5, because one is everything.
Okay, let's go number 5.
Sure. This next one is, I was super, super lucky. I was enrolled into a Harvard Business School, would have been about 9-10 years ago. And it was absolutely enlightening. And I had a professor there by the name of Patty Miller. So I always like to give credit to the people who shared these things with me. And he talked about breaking the frame. And was something I always remember, because it just completely enlightened me about how to look at a problem. So you could almost say this is before spending your time on the right solutions either. But we so get caught up in believing that we, the leaders, have to have all the answers. And we don't, and it's actually dangerous when we do, because we get in, the same way of thinking, the same lines of thinking, and how we break problems. And that's super dangerous, because especially with where we are now, we don't really know what those challenges are going to be getting out of here. We've got an idea, we're not sure. But we have to break the frame in the way we look at this whole thing. So how do you break the frame? And it's funny, I still have the notes from 10 years ago that I wrote down. And here are 5 things that he said to me, which were really important as to why breaking the frame was crucial. Because he said, number 1, your background and your culture depicts your way of thinking, the rules that you live by, all your experiences that you've had, your beliefs, and of course, your current information that you have. So if you think about that when it comes to problem solving, and the other thing with leaders is, once we get stuck on an idea, it's very hard to change our opinions sometimes, because we want to be right, So the more diversity you have in the team, the more opinions, the more thought. When you've got issues, the more you push them down, because the great ideas always come from the clubs. I mean, people down there have some brilliant ideas, and if we're open enough to listen to them, you're going to get all this different opinions and diversions and experiences and beliefs that are going to give us some really good ideas and answers for the future, versus always thinking that the same senior management team can solve every single problem with their same way of thinking.
Yeah, that's such a good perspective, I have to say, Rich. And one of the other things that I've heard frequently, obviously today we're talking about teams and leadership, but one of the other points that have come up in conversation in some of these panels that I've had over the last few days has been around making sure that we're also looking outside our industry and outside our direct kind of 4 walls to see how other people are doing things and how other industries are reacting during this time, given that everything we're going through is new to all of us at the moment. So I love your perspective on making sure that we're reaching out to the team and getting their input and getting their opinion. And I really like what I've written it down, I'm looking down, break the frame. It's a great term and a great reminder for what we need to do during this time. They were fantastic, Rich. Thank you.
Well, and one more thing to add to that, Chantal, which is really important. And we get caught up too with, we ask the staff, but the other mistake we sometimes make is we ask our members, and you'll think, well, why shouldn't we ask our members to tell us what we want? Is because they only know what they know. And if you think about that comment in itself, is we'll get what they want, but is that right? How could we think outside that box? And that's where you made me think when you said that we don't look outside our industry enough, because other industries are doing great things that we can take and implement into our businesses as well, and improve that in customer experience by going outside of there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Rich, this has been brilliant already. So I've just got one more question to finish off. It's the one that we finish all of our interviews with, which is our Keep Me Fit Bizbration. So do you want to share with us one immediate action that leaders can do now to prepare themselves for post-COVID-19?
Well, aside from the ones that I think the big one is breaking the frame, making sure you're asking the right questions to where you get to. I'd like to give a message of hope. I hear a lot of people are worried, they're upset. But if you run a good business right now, you're going to be okay. Have belief in that. And one thing I've learned in my life, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs, as we all have. And if you think back about all those times, did they bring you a gift or did they bring you something negative? They brought you a gift. We know that. But there's always a gift in those negative or down times. And the same thing will be true in this time. When we get ahead, there'll be amazing opportunities that will come out of this. And a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm very worried about people not showing back at the clubs. They're going to stream from home and so forth, which they may. But I think that's a tremendous opportunity for us to make sure that, I was thinking of a good example today. When Starbucks actually started selling beans, right? They didn't serve coffee in. It was only tasting. So then they started serving coffee in restaurant style. So if you think of where we're at now, we went the other way. We were serving in, but we're not serving out. So maybe now we can serve out. We can be Starbucks in a reverse way of helping our proposition and adding value to our proposition with what we do. And one of the things I think that will emerge out of this, there will be a lot of the hotels which are going to be having a tough time. There's some amazing people out there right now who are going to be looking for work, who you're going to be able to employ and bring on. But we will get through this, and ultimately people's habits stay the same, meaning that I'm going to go back to eating at restaurants, even though I've ate the last 43 days in, and I enjoyed it, and I lost some weight as well, so it wasn't so bad, and all the rest. But ultimately, I'm going to get back into eating at restaurants, and ultimately, I'll get back to bricks and mortar and training in the club as well, potentially to add to what I do at home. So don't worry, people. It will come good. We'll have some great lessons that come out of this. Stay strong with a vision of hope, and I think that's what I would pass on to people at this point in time.
Rich, that's a great positive note to finish on today. And thank you so much for sharing those 5 leadership strategies that we touched on. I love every time I talk to you, I learn, and I love that you learn from other people that, you have worked with over the years as well. So we're really grateful for you coming and joining us today and sharing that knowledge with all of the FVP family, and best wishes to you in the business. And we'll actually put some contact details down underneath the video so anyone can reach out to you if they want to find out more about what you're doing at the moment about GoFit and Evolution Wellness. And really grateful for your time here today, Rich. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Chantal. Look forward to seeing you again soon. All the best.
A huge thank you once again to Rich for joining us today. And I also want to say a big thank you to our foundation partner, Active Management, and our friends at Precor. Without all the support of our partners and our advertisers, none of these interviews would be possible. So we're very grateful for your ongoing support. Now, don't forget, if you want to see any of the other videos in the COVID-19 series, all you need to do is go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/COVID-19-videos. That's all from me today, and I will see you for our next video.